One of the most often asked to oneself question from a dungeon master or a game designer or even a player is frequently, how do the greats do it? How do some of the best in the world do their world building? How do they achieve such startlingly interesting worlds that seem more vivid than any other life, that draw attention for decades and decades from everyone near universally? And so, today we will discuss how Final Fantasy is world built, or rather, how do you build a world like Final Fantasy? We won't go into thousands of analysis of Final Fantasy itself. I will just give you brief instructions on how to achieve the same feat of skill. I have thought of this for many a decade, and when I was young, very young, I thought it would be impossible without sitting among such geniuses and pondering together such things of the highest dungeon masters and training for years and years. When I say years and years, I mean dozens and dozens of years, decades and decades. Well, I guess I was only partially off. You seem to do need, if you're doing it on your own and without as much internet as we have today, you do need a lot of time, but now we can condense what skill there is to it as much as possible. This is already second episode in this series of how to world build. Like we did Dark Souls previously, so check that out if you would like to see it. Now for Final Fantasy, let's start from the beginning. To build a world like Final Fantasy, and this is something that you would use in any case of Final Fantasy, I would say, thus far. It's something like Square's signature of how this was accomplished. All the way from the beginning, all the way to today. Every single Final Fantasy is sort of unified, not by story between them, but rather by this principle of world building, which is interesting. This is what kind of, I believe, I have no evidence for this, but I believe that this is why it's called Final Fantasy. It's a sort of experiment in philosophy of world building of a fantasy world. So, what do? We try to take a vastly different metaphysical setup for the world, where there is sufficiently deep, complex methodology of how physics and magic and so on work with your normal human civilization, from the individual to greater span. And how do they develop then? What do they learn and how do they develop culture? Now, this is somewhat true for any world building, but in this case, we specifically concentrate on making, again, as I said, vastly different metaphysical realm. And then seeing in a serious manner, how do humans grow in such a different circumstance of existence that influences their philosophies and their fate and how they perceive the world and the culture. All that is shaped by their experience in now vastly more magical and different world. And then we explore very serious topics of philosophy of the human existence, and that is how do then these people live through love, through friendship, through betrayal, through politics, through exploration of the world, through finding out philosophic and religious truths and lies as well. How do they cope with these situations that we all cope day to day with, except in Final Fantasy? See, that's the unifying topic of Final Fantasy as whole, I would say. Every single one is a different take on a mythical realm and serious look into how then humans and other creatures live in that mythical realm. How do they exist? What is the human condition like there, as opposed to here? Quite the opposite problems arise and quite the opposite solutions arise. And yet some things are also universal, and this sort of experimentation is great for the DM, great for everybody around the DM, and wonderful for your game and your campaign. This is therefore how Final Fantasy series world builds. To achieve some similar heights as some of the best takes in the series, you want to take your metaphysical realm as seriously as possible, whilst also trying to keep it as well elaborated as possible. Unlike what I said previously in a previous episode about Dark Souls, here though you will have ample opportunity to learn firsthand the lore and the situations and the existence yourself, as opposed to glimmers and reflections of the ages, though those will exist too. But here we concentrate more on how do you feel as the player that is playing somebody from there. How will that make you feel? How will that make you feel different yet same feelings that are reminiscent? It's like awakening nostalgia for something that has never yet happened to you, but now it can, in this new wonderful medium of art that is video games and games in total, tabletop as well. Poor be those that don't believe games are art, indeed. So you then delve into feelings of your own existence through a completely different lens, whether character is predetermined, like in some of them, or you create the character, like in some of them, or you self-insert as the characters in some of them. But the idea is to make you both sympathize, empathize, and yet wonder at the same time. Is that really how I would feel? Is that really so that you get to the revelations of, that is interesting. I really never knew that this is how deep these things run in all of us. It sort of lifts up, in my opinion, humanity, makes it seem more fun and welcome than everyday drudgery on Earth. Because on Earth, as much as we have all that complexity, we rarely use it as much because we grow complacent with our pain of everyday work and trouble and drudgery and boredom and betrayal and so on and so forth. Therefore, we forget to look at ourselves through such a super focused magical lens. And this is what you want to pick the background physics and metaphysics to help you develop with your player, so that the player can be reminded of this, so that the player can see this once more, as if they were a small child watching it for the first time. And that is the sort of thing that Final Fantasy is really secretly famous for without anybody telling you. So, feel free to ask me in the comments if you want more tips about this, because I could talk for hours about this. It's one of my favorite topics, but this in itself is the distilled skill of world building like Final Fantasy. You also shouldn't be afraid of embracing it fully if that's what you're after. Poeticness and openness to feelings and interesting interactions outside of such a magical focus might be considered by some to be too cringe, too melodramatic, too much drama, too much emotion. But is that really so? Do we really have to be these burned out raisins of human beings? No, I say we do not have to be. And a good dramatic stage can lead to good Shakespearean art, even if it's a bit stage-based in this case, if you will. So do not be afraid to add poetry, art, literature, depth to your background of your setting and to behavior of your characters, so that they can carry this sort of, it's not small, more be it to say titanic task of making such a wonderful game on their back. Because eventually, Final Fantasy is equal parts the world that is so charming as the characters that are so authentic to it. One without the other would be something else. So, player, adventurer, DM, designer, if you thought this was useful or unique, maybe you can spare me a click and I could see you here perhaps some other week, because every other week I make new such things just for you. I'm Em, and welcome to dMTable. See you next time. Bye.